Oh, good evening, everyone. Welcome to part one of this 4-part webinar series about the skin. And the skin's super important because it's your largest organ. And so we're going to take the next 4 weeks to learn all kinds of interesting things about the skin. Tonight, we're going to kind of take an overview of the skin, and some of the things that we're going to learn tonight are the basis for what we're going to talk about in the following weeks, which will be a little more intricate, but I hope equally as interesting to you as the last class. I got so many wonderful emails from you all regarding our last series, so I'm hopeful that you'll find this one just as helpful to you as you move through all of your processes with your enagic business. So we'll get started here. So you all know who I am by now, and you know a lot about my story and why I got interested in Kangen water. But there's a few things that you haven't heard, and that some of them are going to relate to our topic tonight. And so one of the things that I wanted you to know about my little story, kind of to me a big story about my introduction to ionized water, and specifically to Kangen water, is that I was introduced to ionized water during my European biological medicine classes. Dr. Rao really believed in machines, and I think because the water is a lot more pure in Switzerland than it is here in the United States, he was getting some good results with the Akai machine. And so on his recommendation, I got one. I, however, did not have that kind of results. My patients didn't, I didn't. And so I quit using it. And maybe that was foolish, but honestly, the water tasted so bad. And I wasn't seeing any test results, so I didn't see any reason to try to continue. And so I gave that up. And then after, in 2004, when I got really sick, I was pretty desperate. And a friend of mine from Idaho, Bonnie, kept talking to me about ionized water because she'd been to an enagic demonstration. And she hadn't purchased a machine, but she was really excited about it. And she just kept talking to me about it and talking to me about it. And finally, I was like, I already know about ionized water. I already studied it. She said, but this is different. These people are really having great results. So I decided that the only way to get her off my back, so to speak, was to just go hear a demonstration, go hear a lecture. And I was optimistically skeptical. That's what I like to call it, because I didn't think it was going to work, but I really hoped it would, because I needed a miracle of some kind. And as you might recall from hearing my story before, I drank 4 16-ounce glasses of water during this about 2.5 hour long lecture, and all of my symptoms disappeared. And so I went home puzzled, and my symptoms stayed gone for more than 24 hours. And so I knew it was related to the water. I just couldn't quite figure it out yet. I was still in that brain fog of illness. And after a few days, I figured out there was something going on that I really needed to check out. And so I went back to Seattle the next week. And Seattle's not a short trip from Spokane. It's about 4.5 hours to Issaquah, where the restaurant was where they were doing the demo. And so I went back the following week to another demo and bought a machine. And when I got it home, I started doing all kinds of things with it. I started washing my hair. One of the reasons I started washing my hair with it was because the guys from the restaurant had pictures of themselves and of their bald heads with hair growing back. I was shocked. And so I, from all the stress of the surgery and the anesthesia and everything, I had lost almost all my hair. I mean, it was, you know, like when I went like this, you could see through my hair to my scalp. And I used to have super, super, super thick hair. So that was really concerning to me. And so I started washing, you know, I was drinking the water. I started washing my hair with beauty water and rinsing it, my final rinse with beauty water. And I'm not kidding you when I tell you that in just a few weeks, like 3 weeks, I had almost inch long little hair sprouts. Now my hair grows crazy fast. It grows about 3/4 of an inch a month. And so I know that because my roots grow out. And they grow out pretty fast. You could measure them. And so I'm pretty well aware of how fast my hair grows. And so this was so amazing to me that all over there were these little tiny hair sprouts. I was just shocked and amazed and happy. And so then I started doing all kinds of other experiments, and I noticed a lot of things about my skin. And so I'm really anxious to share some of this stuff with you because it took me a while to figure out all the ins and outs of the protocols, which are in the ionized water protocols book for skin. But those were some of the first real protocols that I developed. So anyway, excited to take you on this little journey. So how this whole advanced class is going to work is that we are going to attempt to have all 4 classes up at the same time, you know, like, so this week the class will go up tomorrow, or the webinar will go up tomorrow, and it'll stay up for the whole time. And then the next week that'll stay up for the whole time. So you'll have access to these 4 classes for a 4-week period. And I wanted to do that for you since it's advanced material. I want you to have plenty of time to go back and review. And we're getting into holidays, so I just wanted you to know that in each of the series, whether it's a 2-week or a 4-week series, the classes will be available for the duration of the series, of that particular series. So anyway, onward and upward. So as you remember, in my naturopathic and European biological medicine classes, I learned that if you could reduce oxidation, create a slight shift in the pH of blood, urine, and saliva, and get more minerals into the cells, the body could heal itself of anything. And of course, that was not the order I learned. I learned pH was tops, but during all of my studying with the water, I realized that that we were out of order, and that if we could start with reducing oxidation, we could make a slight shift in the pH of the blood, urine, and the saliva, and then we could get more minerals into the cells, and then the body could heal itself to whatever the possibilities of that is for that person. Oh, I'm so sorry, I forgot to shut my phone off. And it was just a scam anyway. That a body would heal itself to its fullest healing potential. And so of all of these diseases, where we're going to start is with the skin. And so, you know, things that are as benign as wrinkles actually have a beginning in an unhealthy skin layer. So we're going to talk about wrinkles and acne and psoriasis and eczema and dermatitis and cancer and scleroderma and all kinds of things that are related to the skin. But let's start at the very beginning. Remember that cells are made, that cells form tissues, and tissues form organs, and organs form systems, and systems form organisms like our human bodies. So it's all of these things working together that make a healthy body, a healthy person, a healthy individual, a healthy organism. And remember, tissues are made of groups of cells, and oddly enough, or whatever, auspiciously enough, this is actually a picture of skin cells. That's what skin cells actually look like. And if you were to take just a regular microscope or even a really high power magnifying glass and look at the skin on your hands, you can see this, you can kind of see this structure. It's kind of interesting. Now, I want you to remember that not all organs are internal, like your brain or your heart. There's an organ that we actually wear on the outside. Our skin is our largest organ, and it contains about 2 trillion cells. Remember, our entire body is about 100 trillion cells, but about 2 trillion of those are skin cells. And because it's our largest organ, it weighs at least 8 pounds, depending on your size. And so just think, all of you ladies or gentlemen who'd like to lose a little weight, if you just got skinned, you'd lose some weight, right? Not the best way to do it. But I'm being a little morbid because Heather reminded me we're almost at Halloween. So anyway, and there's about 22 square feet of skin covering your body. And it has so many functions. It does a lot more than just make us look pretty or presentable. In fact, without it, we would literally evaporate. So the skin acts as a waterproof insulating shield. It's so interesting, all the things that the skin does. That waterproofing allows you not to literally evaporate into thin air. And so as you're thinking about your skin and you're deciding which moisturizers to use and what level of SPF sunblock to use and whether or not you will choose the right makeup to create better looking skin, better feeling skin, taking good care of our skin is important for our overall health and well-being because it provides this protective shield, this waterproofing and protective shield from our external environment that would normally cause us some great difficulties. So from everything from too much sun to toxic chemicals to heat and dry air, all of these things are protected by that shield or by that whole protective covering. So the one thing that's really important to remember that your skin has a lot of components, everything from water and fats and proteins and minerals and all kinds of chemicals. Your skin is very complex and it has 3 basic layers. Oh, I forgot to advance the screen. I'm looking at my notes. So here are some of the functions that your skin has. It's waterproofing, it's insulating. So as far as waterproofing, this, as you know, your skin repels water, and except if you use beauty water, but your skin will normally, generally speaking, shed off water, especially if it's too alkaline, because your skin has a specific pH of about 6. Depending on where it is on your body, sometimes as low as 4 and sometimes as high as 6. And so when you put water on it that's too alkaline, it actually tries to repel it. So that's part of the waterproofing, to keep inappropriate moisture off and to keep appropriate moisture in. So it handles it from 2 different directions. It's also insulating, so it protects us from temperature variations by the blood vessels that are in it are constantly sending more or less blood to the area to heat it up or cool it down. It protects us from all kinds of things, including too much sun, that kind of thing. It manufactures vitamin D and it interacts with other organ and glandular systems. And so we're going to get a little bit more specific here. So here's a picture of the 3 layers of your skin. And so the top layer is the epidermis, and the epidermis is the outermost layer. It's the part that you can see and touch and feel, and it's primarily made out of keratin. And what it does I'm sorry, I've got my notes all mixed up here. And so what it does is create a kind of a translucent, it's made up of translucent cells that protect us from all kinds of detrimental factors in the environment. And it's the home of melanin, so that really depends on, it helps determine what your skin color is going to be. And when exposed to the sun, will get even darker because it will activate the melanin. And that melanin is actually really important because it produces vitamin D for your bones and your teeth and other parts of your body. So that's super important. And it controls the appearance of your skin and helps with water retention. Now, the keratinocytes are the same kind of substance that make your hair and your nails. But it's still in a softer and more pliable form when it's in your skin. And it takes several layers of these cells to produce enough of an epidermis to actually do protection for you. And it takes roughly 5 weeks for those to slough off, which we'll talk about a little bit later. It also contains Langerhans cells, and Langerhans cells are the immune producing, it's connected to your immune system. And so it's constant, they're constantly exuding this substance that's it's a protective substance. It's an antibacterial, antiviral, antimicrobial substance that's actually made from your urine. So you're constantly exuding urine from your skin cells, and that actually helps protect you from all kinds of microbes. It's pretty interesting, right? Makes you want to wash your hands more often too, right? So the epidermis is extremely important, and it's bonded. Oh, here's another interesting thing that I remember I said that it takes roughly 5 weeks for newly created epidermal cells to make it to the top and get sloughed off, which I said we would talk about a little bit later. But the skin on your feet, like your heels, is about 10 times thicker than the skin around your eyes. So that determines how many keratinocytes, I'm having a hard time with my tongue tonight, there are in that in your epidermal layer. So the epidermis is actually bonded to the next layer of skin called the dermis. And the dermis is the middle layer of the skin, and it contains two really important proteins. It contains elastin and collagen. And I know if you've listened to very many TV commercials about skincare products, they're always talking about how it stimulates collagen and elastin. And the reason that you want collagen and elastin to be stimulated is because that gives your body, your skin, more structure. And the more structure your skin has, the more keratin and elastin it has, the more elastic it is, and the fewer wrinkles you have. The other thing that's contained in your dermis are blood vessels, and the blood vessels actually regulate body temperature by increasing the flow to the skin to allow heat to escape, or by restricting the flow when it's cold. So by restricting the flow, it holds the heat internal, and when you're hot, it expands and allows heat to escape. So that's why you have sweat glands in your skin. It's part of how your body releases toxins, releases moisture, so that the air around you can cool your body. Your dermis also has a lot of nerve endings and sensory fibers, and that's really important because it makes a constant contact and sends all kinds of signals to your brain to help protect you from all kinds of things in your environment. And you know, this is, you've been in situations where the hair literally stood up on your skin, on your arms. And that's because that's part of that nervous system and sensory fiber interacting with your hair follicles. So it happens when you're cold, but it also happens when something creepy or eerie or scary happens to you. And that's part of your brain sending signals to your skin and your skin sending signals back to your brain. So it's actually something that's part of our ancient ancestry, because you see how dogs, if you have a dog or you've been around a dog or a cat, when they get nervous or scared, how their hair stands up. The same thing happens to us. It's one of those things that has followed us in our evolution to protect us. When we have something scary going on, even if we aren't consciously aware of it, our body is, and it will send a weird signal to us to help us pay attention. And so, of course, in the epidermis is where the hair follicles live. And so that's interesting. Now, one of the things you might not know about the dermis is that the sweat glands in the dermis are actually changed during puberty to exude a sort of pheromone heavy sweat, which attracts people of the opposite sex. So that's kind of interesting, right? So the base layer, the third layer, is subcutaneous, or now more commonly called the hypodermis. And that's a very fatty layer that feeds the skin. And as you get older, a few things happen. That fatty layer gets thinner. The collagen and elastin start to break down. And so you just have a thicker layer of epidermis, and that's why you can start seeing things like blood vessels. You can start seeing wrinkles and deep creases and things like that in your skin because of that fatty layer. Now, the other reason you have that fatty layer in the subcutaneous or hypodermis is it protects you from, it like protects your bones and your internal organs from bumps and bruises and things, bumps and damage. So that's why you'll see that you get a bruise on your skin, because that fatty layer is actually protecting you. It's providing that cushion between your skin and what's below it in that particular area, whether it's the next layer is mostly muscle everywhere. So it's protecting the muscle, which is protecting bones and organs and glandular systems. Let's see, what else do I want to tell you about this? So as you know, when that fatty layer starts to go, your skin starts to sag. So sagging skin is really it's actually a problem. It's letting you know that your skin isn't as healthy as it could be. I know you have seen people like Jane Fonda, who's like a bionic woman. She looks so young, even though she's not. And part of it is because she stays so healthy. She drinks so much water. She doesn't drink much alcohol. Although same with J-Lo. Look at her. She looks younger than she used to. Part of that is because J-Lo drinks Kangen water. And she doesn't drink alcohol, and she doesn't drink much coffee, and she exercises, and she gets good sleep, all those things that we know we need for a balanced life. I'm not giving up my coffee, I'm telling you. So let's talk about some skin cell progression. So it takes 5 weeks. I'm sorry, that's wrong. It takes 5 weeks in the epidermis to go from the bottom of the epidermis to the top. And I'm not sure how I got that in there, but anyway, you may be interested to know that you lose, and this is also wrong. Man, I should have checked my own. You lose an average of 40,000 cells per hour, not per day. That's a lot of skin cells, right? And you know, the dust that's around your house, it's mostly skin cells. Kind of creepy, right? Again, almost Halloween. So I want you to look at this and think about sloughing. If you could keep your epidermis, your dermis and your epidermis really healthy and really moisturized, you're going to slow down that sloughing off of cells to a more appropriate 20,000 cells per hour rather than 40,000 cells per hour. The more hydrated your skin stays, the healthier it looks, and the longer you keep the epidermis, and the plumper the dermis is, and that fatty layer of the subcutaneous or hypodermis stays plump. And remember that diseases and issues, problem issues of the skin like acne and eczema and psoriasis and dermatitis and cancer and scleroderma and dry, oily, or flaky skin all have a very similar beginning. And that happens as cells multiply to make new daughter cells that are identical to the original cell. So for instance, if you have a dry skin cell that you're starting out with, it's because it's not properly hydrated. So a dehydrated cell will multiply and make two dehydrated cells, which will then each multiply to make, each of them will make two more. And so that's how diseases start in the skin. And the number one problem with most skin issues begins with oxidation, just like we've talked about in our last class. It all begins with oxidation when all of those skin cells, which is, you know, this one makes the most sense when you think about oxidation because it's on the outside of your body where you are exposed to more radiation, to more EMFs, to more chemicals and air pollution and harsh detergents that you're washing or any of those things are all going to be filled with free radicals. So this is the easiest place to actually visualize that that all of your skin cells are being bombarded with 10,000 free radicals every day. And more than other cells, it's easy to imagine how that bombardment would change a highly functioning cell. Like when you have a baby, you know how we all love baby skin because it's so soft and silky and plump and it looks so fresh. And those are skin cells that are working pretty well in a healthy baby. And then over time, with all that bombardment, we start to see that oxygen is reduced from getting into the cells and water is repelled, more water is repelled from the cell membrane, and more carbon dioxide is trapped into the cell, which can damage the DNA of the cell. When that happens to skin, we start to see real skin problems like scleroderma. And I don't know if you know what scleroderma is, but it is a disease process of the skin where the skin begins to turn hard like a rock. And it generally starts in your hands and feet and works its way up your arms and up your legs until you literally become stone and die. And there is no known cure for scleroderma. I have had patients in the past with scleroderma, and we were able to make some really great progress and slow the progression of the disease down, and they lived years and years longer than their doctors had expected. Now, if someone that was prone because of DNA to develop scleroderma, and they were to start drinking ionized water and using the right pH on their skin, I firmly believe that they would never contract the disease, that it would be reversed before it even began. And that's the whole secret here, is that we want to try to reverse the onward progression of oxidation so that these issues never ever actually materialize. Not wait until you have them and try to reverse them, but try to stop them before they even begin. Now remember that all cells, and importantly skin cells, have pumps, channels, and receptor sites that are made from those embedded proteins that are also damaged by free radicals. And also remember that skin cells, remember the epidermis is made mostly of keratin, which is mostly protein. And so we want to protect the protein as well as the fat layers. This is so important in skin. If you want to see your skin change, this is how you do it. You drink the water for internal hydration, and you use beauty water for external hydration. Because remember that your skin also has all of the very centers of energy production. All cells have that. Remember that some cells actually have more mitochondria than others. Your skin cells don't have as many as the epidermis isn't going to have as many as the hypodermis. Since the hypodermis is mostly fat, you have lots more mitochondria in fat cells than you do in other cells. So remember that to make enough energy to fuel the cell so that it can reproduce, it can just do its cellular respiration, it always goes through this process of creating free radicals. So for every molecule of ATP, we get 2 molecules of free radicals. So this is really important. This is why it's so important to drink the water, because that's where the free electrons and the hydrogen gas come to play to act as the antioxidants to reverse or to mitigate those free radicals. Now this is so important because your skin is, if without healthy skin, you really truly can't have much of a healthy body, because it's not going to have this, as we get into this, you're going to learn how important your skin is to all kinds of other functions, from hormones to mental health to everything. Your skin plays a vital role in all that. So if your skin isn't healthy, your body's not going to be healthy. So remember that oxidation leads to dehydration, and dehydration in the skin is so visible. That's when we see dry, flaky, irritated skin that sometimes looks almost painful, because as that dehydration continues, we get inflammation. And so it's in the whole world of this cycle of oxidation, your skin is a more visible representation than any place else, because you can't see your heart and you can't see your lungs or your liver or your blood vessels, but you can see your skin. So this is why when I did demonstrations, I always had a tiny fine misting spray bottle, not like a big spray bottle, but a little one like you can get from a health food store. They usually carry these little glass bottles, blue bottles with a sprayer. And I always kept some beauty water in there. And at the beginning of my demonstration, I would say, now this is for later. So just want to have some volunteers. I want anyone who'd like to try this experiment to let me see your left hand. So I'd only spray everybody's left hand. And I'd always spray mine too. And to this day, there is a difference in the way my skin looks from my left hand to my right hand. They would be so shocked after a few minutes of looking down at their hands. During my demo, they would actually interrupt me and say, "Oh my God, look at my hand. It looks so young." And that's because they've been chronically dehydrated, and it's showing up in their skin. So this is one of the easiest ways for you to talk to people about ionized water and its effect on hydration. Now, since every cell in our body has a different pH requirement, and beauty water is the pH requirement for our skin, that's why you can see it. There is no need to tell them what the pH of that is at the moment. Don't even go there during a demo. Just let them know that it's because their skin got hydrated. Because ionized water hydrates the body faster for a number of reasons. But now, let's get back to the skin. So any condition of the skin that has redness, whether it's a rash or a pimple or a boil or a cut that looks a little infected, that's all an inflammation stage. So we went from oxidation to dehydration to inflammation. Okay, so for instance, right now, because of some things that I was doing without wearing gloves appropriately, I have a split on my thumb at the nail. And so it's tender, it's red, it's irritated. So the oxidation that I created by handling some harsh chemicals without gloves created a level of dehydration in my hands. And that particular spot is now experiencing a significant amount of inflammation. And that's how that progress goes. So now, in order to reverse that, I've got to do some things to create hydration in my skin. And in order to create hydration in my skin, I have to put some kind of a layer of protection to stop the oxidation. Okay? Now, the perfect antioxidant, we know, finds itself in our water in the form of two particular substances. And one of them is hydrogen gas, and the other one is free electrons. Now, these are vitally important when you're drinking the water. It is vitally important in drinking the water because this is how you're going to heal those cells from the inside, reversing the oxidation, allowing hydration, and eliminating inflammation. However, when we're talking about spraying it on the skin, we actually want a bit of a positive ORP. We want it to be below neutral. We want it to be somewhere in that 4 to 6 pH range because that's what specifically helps our skin. Now remember that I said that your skin is constantly exuding urine as a protective measure. It's part of what's in the protective measure that's released by the cells to keep everything healthy. Well, that has an acidic pH of about 4. And so our skin cells are ideally about 5.5, but the stuff that comes out to protect us from microbes is usually somewhere around 4 to 4.5. So that's why when we use beauty water that's in that range, it actually helps us in a couple of ways. It's restoring some hydration to the skin, but it's also putting a layer of acid to help kill microbes. And the more microbes we kill, the less those microbes are creating oxidation, because those microbes that are bombarding us from our environment are actually part of that cycle of oxidation. So we can help stop that by spritzing our skin with beauty water. Who knew, right? Remember this little illustration from our other class that water and electricity produces ions, atoms, and molecules. So H2O becomes OH negative or H positive. And we also get oxygen and hydrogen gas, right? So when we're talking about our skin, we're really talking about the positively charged hydrogen ions. And the more concentrated they are, the more they do specific chores. So as we just mentioned that the ions create pH changes, So the negative hydroxide ions are really not good for your skin. They're not. They dry it out. They're the wrong pH. Now, if you have as you know from my ionized water protocols book, if you have super oily skin, then you want to use a really high pH because it will actually act as a surfactant or an emulsifier and get that excess oil off the skin. Or if you have a little infection and sometimes it produces that sebum that kind of makes a scabby thing. More like if you have eczema or psoriasis, and it gets that kind of clear oozy stuff that comes out, and then as it dries it sort of crystallizes. Well, the high pH water will actually dissolve that as well. And then you go on to using, in that instance, you'd go on to using some strong, highly charged acid water. And when we use the acid water, it actually acts as an antimicrobial to help our skin out. And then we go back to beauty water, which would have a balancing effect to the skin. Now remember that while the H2 creates antioxidants, we really need those on the inside of our body. What we really are talking about when we're talking about our external organ, the very epidermal layer, it's the epidermis that needs the slightly acid water, while the dermis and the hypodermis actually need the alkaline water that's going to come from inside of our bodies. Now remember that in the presence of platinum is where we get our free electrons. So those free electrons are going to mitigate the damage to that hypodermis first. Remember, that's a fatty layer, and any fat is easily oxidized. So the more easily oxidized the substance is, the more important it is to have enough antioxidants. And in the whole world of antioxidants in the skin, it's actually the vitamin C that helps build collagen and elastin. So remember that a free radical is just an atom or a molecule that's lost one or more electrons. And so the best antioxidant is just a free electron. And here I got ahead of myself. So on this particular slide, we want to look at the bottom one in blue. Vitamin C helps support connective tissue and skin. So vitamin E is not super helpful for your skin unless you have a burn. And vitamin A, it does help support mucous membranes in the lungs. So it's not that vitamin A and E won't help your skin at all. It's that vitamin C is the primary vitamin that produces a result in your skin. So if you do not have my book, Ionized Water Protocols, I highly recommend that you get it because it will help you understand how to use the pHs of water to reverse this cycle, this downward cycle of oxidative stress, to help revitalize the tissues to create a healthy body. Now, you might get tired of this slide, but it's my favorite one because I know that when we understand how to use this water appropriately, when we understand our organ and glandular systems and how to use the water together, we can truly impact the health of people all around the world, one glass of water at a time, because it always starts internally. So here's your assignment for week 1. I want you to write down every single question that you can think of regarding the skin and send them to me, because I'm going to use those questions to help me finesse the rest of the other three webinars in this series to make sure that I've covered all of the bases. And now for this week, I want you to follow the water protocol for any particular skin issues that you have and chart your progress for the week. And I would really, really appreciate it if you could send me some examples of what you have and how that water protocol made a difference by the time we get to the end of this particular course. So now we're going to open up and take some questions. So let's see. I know we have one here. So Katrina said, I had a client who said that his hand was softer, was because I sprayed it with water. I did a test myself between tap and beauty water and both felt the same. No, it really, here's the thing, your mist, you probably didn't have a very fine mist on your water. If the water droplets are large, it won't penetrate very well. If you have super fine mist, it really makes a pretty big difference. She said she did have it on fine mist. I'd look for an even finer one, but I can guarantee you that when I've done these demos before, I did the left hand with beauty water and the right hand with tap water. They're still telling me during the demo how different it is. It really is different. Let's see. So Robin said, what's the best water to use after surgery to help with scarring? So scar tissue is a little different than all the rest of the tissue, your skin tissue, because it has more keratin that's helping to stick things together. And so the best thing, I can't really show you. Maybe I can. My video isn't good enough, but I'll take some pictures next week and put them up, because as we go through this, we're going to talk about skin healing and that sort of thing. But in 1987, I think, I had a really bad car accident, and I was living in Dallas, and I exited, and a woman who was reading a map, talk about distracted driving, clipped the rear quarter panel of my Toyota van, and it caused it to spin around. It was one of those first Toyota vans that was top heavy, and then it rolled over and over. And the mirror came through and broke the window, and then my arm went out the window and along the pavement. So I had a pretty nasty, terrible cut on my series of cuts on my arm. And for years, it looked terrible, and I had no feeling in it. Then I started drinking the water and using beauty water on it. The color changed from red, because it used to be when I would wear a short sleeve or sleeveless shirt, people would say years later, oh my goodness, what happened to your arm? That looks like a terrible burn. And it did. It looked like a burn. And it was really lumpy, and the texture wasn't very good, and the scar tissue was super red, and there was a lot of road trash that was still inside of it. So it had all this gray matter as well. And the longer I used it, the more feeling I got back in it, and the softer the scar tissue got, and the more, like, all the redness is gone out of it. It's really pretty amazing. So it's really important to go ahead and use this protocol. Now, if you just got out of surgery, be really careful about the amount of water that you're using on a scar, because, on an incision, because you don't want to introduce too much wetness, or it will actually cause an infection. But right after surgery, it's good to lightly mist it several times a day with 2.5 water to help with any bacterial infections. Okay, so creping of the skin, we're going to get to that when we talk more about the hypodermis, but that's why the hypodermis, the fat in the hypodermis, or the subcutaneous, is actually too oxidized. So you really got to up your water game and make sure that you're drinking your water as fresh as possible, so that it has the most antioxidants in it. And then continue to treat your skin. Now, I'm not going to tell you that you're not going to get any creping. I'm almost 64, and I've noticed in the last couple of years that I'm getting some too, and that my lines are a little deeper. But honestly, for 15 years, I pretty much stopped aging because I looked more like this back in 2005. And then I got a lot younger. And so it's just now catching up to me again. Not bad, right? Uh, Delaying your aging by 15 years is not such a bad thing. So, anyway, why does Kangen water help with psoriasis? Help some with psoriasis, but not others. And if they're using the water protocol, it will treat what's happening on the outside, but not what's happening on the inside. So most people with psoriasis have a really big food allergy going on. Psoriasis and eczema, particularly eczema, which is sometimes a precursor to psoriasis. A lot of that has to do with dairy and wheat allergies. And so if you get them to change their diet and have more high quality fats, more avocado, more coconut oil, more MCT oil, that kind of thing, along with the water protocol, pretty magical. So chemical sensitivity is another thing that will bring up psoriasis, but psoriasis is actually, in the homeopathic world, it's the psora. It has to be treated from an homeopathic in homeopathic ways as well to get rid of it forever. But it's a big what in homeopathic terms is called a miasm, and that's what their word for predisposition. And psora has everything to do with skin and skin diseases, and can eventually, in homeopathic world, leads to things like skin cancer and gout and all those kinds of things. But it also has to do with some internal diseases as well. So when dentists extract your teeth, they sanitize your mouth. Can the 2.5 be used as a substitute for disinfectant on open gums? I'm going to tell you, we were going to talk about this really thoroughly when we get to the dental portion of these advanced classes. But I had my wisdom teeth taken out when I was young, when I was in college, my first year in college. And then not too long after that, I developed a root, I had an abscess and got a root canal. I didn't know that all of these things were not great. And so I started having cavitations, which are infections in the bone, and had to have extractions. And so that cavitation just kept moving forward, and I kept losing one tooth after another, until finally I made my holistic dentist, who some of you might have seen if you followed me for a long time. His name is Kurt Easton. He was my dentist, and I made him use 2.5 water to irrigate the the opening, and it stopped this progression of cavitation. I've never had one since. So yes, it's amazing. What should a person who just had, I think it's supposed to be foot surgery, what should a person who just had foot surgery, what water and how soon can they soak it? Okay, so again, not while the incision isn't healed. While the incision isn't healed, just go ahead and spritz it gently with 2.5 water several times a day. Do not soak it. Once it's healed and your surgeon says now you can soak it, then you start soaking it in 11.5 water, followed by, you spray it down with 2.5 water, soak it in 11 point, I'm so sorry. Spray it down with 2.5 water. After that, spray it down with 11.5 water. Now you've stopped the oxidation. You allowed the oxidation to kill any microbes. You let it dry. You spray it with 11.5 water to mitigate all those free radicals that you just sprayed on it. You don't want any collateral damage, and then you soak it in beauty water. Okay, I had surgery on my back this year and I just sprayed 2.5 on it. Well, that does work. But it's always a good idea to follow that up with 5.5 water after it's dry to get your skin back to normal. And what do you suggest for people with severe dry scalp? So this is why you have to use, you might need to change your shampoo because you might have a little allergy to shampoo. Use a mild organic shampoo that doesn't have a bunch of nasty chemicals in it. And then always, 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 always rinse with 5.5 water. And it is going to be cooler, but that's actually good. It helps the lymphatic flow in your head. So, it's one of those good things. Now, if that doesn't do it, then it's probably because you're using some other chemical laden stuff, like maybe you're using some kind of a hair gel or something in your hair that you might have a little sensitivity to. So continue every day to spritz your hair with some 5.5 water. And honestly, you probably don't have enough fat in your diet. And if you're worried about that, you can also use some coconut oil. Coconut and rosemary together really make a really fantastic hydration and antimicrobial situation for your scalp. And you just massage it into your scalp and try to leave it on overnight and rinse it off the next day. I don't have an anispa, so I've never tested, so I can't answer whether it produces alkaline or acidic water. My understanding is that it produces mildly acidic water, but I don't have one and I never have. Is a buildup of scar tissue due to vitamin or mineral deficiency? Now, some people are prone to developing keratosis, too much keratin, which produces bigger scars. But again, if you, and I have that. And so the fact that my scar tissue looks so good now is amazing. And I think it was Heather that said that the scars on her neck are coming back to life and looking a lot better. Yay. I missed your response to this question again, Dennis. Yes. So you'll want to go back and listen to that. And we're going to actually cover that when we get to so we're going to go from this outer covering of your body. And then we're going to start at the top of you and work our way through our organ and glandular systems. So we're going to talk about the brain, and we're going to talk about your eyes, and then we're going to get to your mouth, and that one is going to be mind-boggling to you, I predict. Anyway, when we get to that series about your oral health, because there's a lot more to oral health than just your gums. Every one of your teeth is actually connected to a meridian system in your body. So every tooth is connected to an organ or glandular system, muscles, nerves, all kinds of things. It's amazing. So just to give you a little teaser between now and then, when Dr. Raud in his clinic in Switzerland was doing a whole informal study on it, because a lot of women with breast cancer came to him, he noted that 89% of the women who came to him who had breast cancer had a root canal in a breast meridian tooth. Shockaroozer, right? So we're going to be talking about those dead embalmed root canals that you might have, and when we get there. So you'll learn so much, and it'll be so enlightening and almost frighteningly enlightening when we get to the whole oral cavity. Anyway, it is past time. Just barely. We're really sticking to our guns here. I so appreciate it. We have, like I said earlier, we have about 40 of you. We started out with 120 in our first class, and we're down to 40. So that's going to mean more of your questions probably get answered. And as I said early, just in case you tuned in late, You'll have about all, let me start over. You'll have a chance to go back and re-listen to class 1, 2, 3, and 4. They'll all be available. So we won't remove class 1 when class 2 comes up, and when class 2 comes up, when class 3 comes up, we won't remove 2 or 1. We're just going to try to keep them all together until that last the 7 days after the 4th one, and then they'll all come down. So I'm going to, Diana just asked for another thing. And so I'm going to go back, and she said, I missed your response to the question. Can you answer again? When dentists extract your teeth, they sanitize your mouth. Can 2.5 be used as a substitute to disinfect open gums? Yes. And she has a friend who's having 14 teeth extracted. She just installed her SD501 and asked if 2.5 water can be used to disinfect her mouth. Yes, yes, yes. Now follow the water protocol for your mouth. Otherwise, you're going to erode the enamel on your teeth. I did that already. You don't need to follow suit. So, thank you so much for joining us for this advanced class. I hope that I'll be able to answer every question that you have. Make sure you send me your questions. Keep track of your homework assignment, and I will see you here next Monday. Thank you for making my week great. I look forward to next week. Bye-bye.